Well, hello everyone. Jordan Goldmeyer here, talking to you, or coming to you, I should say, on one of the most interesting topics, at least for me, because I love writing. Well, what was the inspiration here on how to write a book? Well, as many of you know, I wrote Becoming a Data Head last year, so it came out this year, but I wrote it over 2020. And then previously, several years back, I wrote Dashboards for Excel and Advanced Excel Essentials. And in writing these books, I've learned a lot, and a lot of people still want to know, how do you write these, how do you get a publisher, at least in the technical space, in the science space, how do you get them to pick up your book? So I'm going to tell you what I've learned over the years. So look, first of all, I'm going to give you my observation. I think we are in the golden age of books. Why do I think that? Because right now, and as I initially put this slide together, it was really focusing on what I had seen going on at O'Reilly, and I've worked with other publishers as well. I've never published a book with O'Reilly. My first two books were with A-Press, and then the other one was with the most recent one, Becoming a Data Head. I have a dog-eared copy right here. This book was with Wiley. Okay, so whether you're O'Reilly, Wiley, A-Press, or Packt, right now many of these companies are looking for authors just like you to create content, whether that's books, in this case we're focusing on books, but it's also webinars, things like that. And what I've seen was, when I pitched to O'Reilly years ago, before A-Press had picked up my book, I pitched them kind of a dashboards book, and they were looking at it and they said, well, our market was filled with dashboard book, or that content already. Today, a lot of publishers are looking at that, and I can't speak exactly for if that's what O'Reilly's doing, but I suspect are saying, the internet is big, the world is big. It's a lot more important to have a voice be heard, a different voice, even if it's on the same subject, because every single person can have something unique to say, and this is what's guiding it, which is why I say we're in the golden age of books, because whereas before, a publisher might not have been able to take a chance on something, now they can. So if you have an idea, this is the time. If I could just sell that to you, this is the time. Okay, so who should write a book? Well, someone who would find it fun, I'm assuming, and that would be someone who enjoys writing. If you don't enjoy writing, I hate to tell you right now, there's going to be a lot of it. If you enjoy deadlines, so, it may very well be that you're not someone who enjoys deadlines, but I want you to understand what will make your book writing process smooth is following deadlines, and I'm going to give you a way to do that. Now, if you're someone who says, I can never follow through on deadlines, I'm terrible with that, fear not, because I was that person. Dashboards for Excel was supposed to take 9 months. It took 3.5 years. They almost pulled the plug on the project. I learned a lot about being late a lot and what publishers need. And one of those things is, a lot of people pick up books when they're at the height of starting to get some momentum around their content. They start writing, and what happens is they become overly committed to other projects. And what you should know is a book is very time intensive. So if you have a lot of stuff going on, if you're like, well, I got the book going on, I got the business, I got the blog, I got the YouTube, it's hard to put a book in that. So keep in mind that before you start, you should know that you have planned time. Okay, so just something to help you out so that you don't become that author who is very delayed, who they say, hey, if you don't start putting stuff in, we're going to pull the plug on this project. So you don't want to be that person. Well, what do you need to get started? Okay, well, what you would need is a book proposal. Now, we usually consider the book proposal as the step one here. But what I want to say is, and I may just talk about the inquiry, there is kind of a step 0 here, which you can do. And, you can decide whether you want to do it, okay? The inquiry step is basically you write to an acquisition editor and you say, here's my idea, and they say, okay, I like it, do this and this, or I want a proposal, okay? So you can either send a full proposal, in which case it's like an inquiry, they're just going to get a little bit more detail and be able to go through it, or you can send an inquiry first. So the inquiry, let's assume you do that. The inquiry step basically is here's my idea, 2 to 3 paragraphs, the title and who it's for, and you don't have to spend a lot on this, okay? And that just gives them an idea of where is this going to fit? Is it within their vertical? Sometimes they'll reach out to an acquisition editor and they have like a certain purview for a certain, set of subjects, so they may send it to somewhere else. But ideally, either they're going to send it somewhere else and say this person would be interested, or they're going to tell you they're interested, in which case you would move to a proposal. So the proposal is made up of the projected title. You don't have to stick to the title you put in. You need a description, 2 to 3 paragraph description of what the book is about, kind of what you would do in the inquiry. They do want a table of contents, a first chapter. I was able to skip this on my first book because I had so much blog writing, but to be honest with you, when we pitched to Wiley, I had a first chapter because I like the idea of having a first chapter. That gives them a sense of like what they're gonna get in terms of my writing and my style. And then what they're also going to ask for is market research on the book proposal. Most companies are going to have a template they're going to give you after they say, oh yeah, we like your idea. If you take all this data and you just dump it into a Google Doc or like a Word doc and send it, it's very easy then to redump it into their proposal template. So no matter what, you're going to send it in, they're going to say, we want you to put in our template. My view is don't dump your ideas on them. All right, so many acquisition editors will disagree with me on this, even though it's their job. They say, oh, well, send us any ideas you have, maybe because they're good at it. But I do think it's a little embarrassing for me when I send someone to an acquisition editor and they tell me, when they talk to me, they have this book idea and then they just send all this all this disorganized writing that they've just done on a Google Doc. They just paste that into an email and act like that's a book proposal. Okay, so that's not a proposal. Please put some thought into what you propose. It's not really, they're not looking to say yes or no. An acquisition editor does not greenlight an idea, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. What they're looking for is there structure? Can you write? Are you reliable? Do you have a tone? Do you have a voice? Is there market? When I say market research, it doesn't mean like charts and graphs. It really, all they're looking for, and this is super, super easy, okay? They will tell you what to do. They're just looking for you to look for other books within that topic, perhaps by other publishers, so they know they have something like a yardstick to compare it against. And they're also looking to see if they already have content on that, where that would fit in with their own, stock of books. And they're not business people looking for this deep proposal. They're just looking, are the pieces there to move forward? Okay, so here's the process. Your acquisition editor is going to review the proposal. They're going to refine it because they don't make the decision. It then goes to usually an executive or an acquisition board. Usually there's seniors and all this stuff, but I think, because I've not been there, either there's a vote or a mutual discussion about what to bring forward. And then if they say, well, we need more of this or that, the board comes back and says, no, but we like it. There's, some feedback. Usually that'll take about a week. They'll come back and say, well, can you add this or that? You add it in, goes again to the, there's usually monthly or weekly meetings at these companies to talk about the proposals that have come in. And then they go back to the board. And then finally, the book gets a green light, and then you go to the negotiation process, okay? So you haven't even really written anything except the first chapter yet in the proposal, as well as the table of contents. And they're not going to give you a book unless you do these things. So if you're like, oh, I don't know what to do yet, I don't know what to do, then you got to take a step back and think about it. All right, so here's the thing. I can tell you about negotiations for tech and Excel books in the nonfiction space, right, without an agent. There's so much book negotiating that could go on that this is not a treatise on all of it. And so here's what I'll tell you. It used to be that you'd get nice advances, all right? Those advances are going away as the model of selling books is no longer going on the shelves. It's more like ebook. And also, books they have a different type of life. So those advances are going away. And just remember, the advances against your royalties. So you do owe it back in a sense, right? Your royalties have to pay off that certain amount before you start getting royalties again. Now, the big thing here is you're not going to make a lot of money on books. It's not life-changing money. And if it's your first book, you don't have much of a negotiating position. So you can try to negotiate for more a greater advance. You could try it. Now, I'll tell you, here are some things that you can easily negotiate that they are likely to say yes to. So first of all, you usually get about 10 to 20 free print books. And where that number comes from, they just write it down, okay? So there's not really a standard. One person might offer you 10, another might offer you 20 based off of, that's just a good sounding number. So here's what I would say. Those books just, they fly. Like once you write the book, you've promised it to, your aunt, your uncle, your friend. So those free books, they go away quickly. So if it's your first run, I would ask for at least 50 free books. And I find that number to be an amenable thing. You can always go for more, but that's like a top number that they're likely to say yes to pretty quickly. Okay, they might say, oh, that's a lot, but it makes sense, right? You want some free, because after you run out of the free books, you have to buy them from the publisher, and you can get them at a discount, but it's still a lot of money. I mean, if you think about a book that sells $40 to $60, even at a 40 to 60% discount, 100 units of that is not cheap, right? So like, get as many of these as you can. And then the other thing about the advances, all right, they will probably tell you, oh, we won't give you an advance until X amount of the project is done, right, as an incentive. But the advance they give you is not good, right? It's not enough money for you to be incentivized to move. The amount they're paying you for the work you do is just, it's peanuts, okay? So what I would offer to you is, if you can, try to get more of that advance up front. And what they're going to say to you is, oh, we never do that, or we don't know how to do that. And just say, hey, look, this is a condition of us getting started. I want 100% of the advance up front. They're almost certainly going to say no to that. But let them offer something to you that's more than maybe the 25% that they want to give you, maybe 50, 75%. And just know that when you ask for these things, right, it will take time for them to update the contract and to get approval, right? So the other thing you should know is that many publishing companies, their finance departments are running on 1980s technology, all right? So anything that you ask for that requires some complication, they will mess up multiple times, all right? So, I mean, you need to accept that. That's what you're getting into, okay? No, like, I just want you to understand that, like, you can say, oh, well, I agreed to that, and that's great. And in particular, usually when you write your book, so the way the advance works is, here's a timeline. Maybe you have milestone 1, milestone 2, and then milestone 3 is the ending milestone, okay? So usually what they want to do is stagger these, and this last one, when you finish the book, you would think that would be the easiest one. Every time I finished a book, this last final payment has come late. So my view is, I don't want to chase it if it's a lot of money, so I tell them they got to pay me like a little bit more up front. And this is like, not just books, there are other things I do that have a royalty structure like this. And that's what I like to do. And I think if you just kind of bring a sense of assertiveness, or if you've done it before in some other ways, you can get a little bit farther. Like, don't underplay your negotiating position, but know that if it's your first book, you might end up saying yes to stuff that, you tried to play your hand and they just said no, and that's it. Like, next book, you will have a little bit more to work on. All right, so how much are you going to make with a book? So the publisher is always going to tell you they have no idea. I mean, and to some extent they don't, right? They don't know. They're operating on a business model that uses a portfolio method, right? So the portfolio basically works like this. There's a set of books that they release every year. Some of them are going to be stinkers. Some of them are going to do great. Probably every several years they have one that just blows out, just goes huge. And that's their business model, all right? So they're kind of less interested in you being successful. Many of them want you now today to come and bring your own audience. So it's like a BYOA situation. I'm gonna write that down here. And this is like a theme as we move into like TikTok, things like that, LinkedIn, that bring your own audience is gonna be very significant going forward. So just keep that in mind. It's worth investing in building followers, things like that, on a platform in which you can like talk directly to people. So a lot of publishers want you to do that because that's going to help sell the book, right? So you can ask for the book scan data of comparable books. You can ask. I don't know if they're allowed to share that with you, but you can ask. All right. So BookScan is proprietary data from Nielsen that tracks. It does point of sale. It can track point of sale books. I don't know how reliable it is. One other thing you can do is assume a print run of 10,000 units, because I think that's what they usually plan for. A 2-year shelf life of any book, which means that you're going to get your best sales and most of your sales. And what they say 80-20 rule, 80% of your sales are going to come in that first 2 years. You can ask other MVPs how they've done. We all like to share. It's just so we can get data. I shouldn't say we all like to do. I like to share, and I know several others who like to share, because we believe in sharing that sort of data helps out a lot. But you can think about it this way, okay? So you have 10,000 books, print run, that's your print run. You are going to sell, let's say it sells at $30 on average, because even if it's priced at $60, Amazon might sell it. There's discounts, things like that, so it sells for $30, of which you usually are only going to get a 10% royalty rate. So let's take a look at that, right? Shall we? I'm so bad at math, it's not computational, right? So if it's not in Excel, I'm not doing it. Okay, so I did this poorly. Okay, so 10,000, right? Sells at $30. That's 300,000 multiplied by 10%. So that's 30,000. Okay, so that's not so bad if you make that, and that would be, usually you can split that over 2 years. So that's 15K a year. That's one way to look at it. Now this number here is it's a bit of a stretch, okay? But it's just a way to look at it. So 15K per year, it's not so bad. But note that you may not even get 10%. Okay, so that's, again, these are based off of a lot of factors, because I should say 10K is on if it does well, but you can also assume a 2K run if it's kind of a niche topic, in which case you'll make quite a bit less. So, I've had books sell in both of these ranges, just a way to think about it. All right, the other thing is, unless, your book is going to have major volume, I think books that have done significantly well in my space, Data Science for Business, there is a Power BI book, I can't think of the name of it, that has done really well by Rob Colley. These types of books, he wrote at the time of the definitive Power BI book, and was a major voice in the Power BI community as it was blowing up. Most books will not sell huge amounts of money. Most of them will not gross $1 million in this space, but every once in a while one will. Could it be yours? My view is that the first one, second one, third one, it might not be. The more you write, the bigger your chances are. Don't write looking for that. Write because your book is a big business card, right? So you can use your book to leverage it, give it to clients as gifts, things like that, to go into even more broader, larger engagements. So that's the way I look at it. Okay, so when it comes to writing a book, here's what I'll say. You have 3 tasks, all right? So your job is to write. It's like Seth Godin says, your job is to ship if you're a creative, right? So your job here is to write, and this is how you can be successful. Write. Don't edit, write, okay? Did you hear me? Hopefully you heard me on that, because if you try to edit, you're gonna be late. Your job is to write, okay? So if you try to edit, you're going to be late. So here's the deal. If you write, and you write well, and you stick to your schedule, you'll be great. So what does that mean? It means that you send in work that's imperfect. What? Send in work that's imperfect where someone can judge my writing? People who are really smart? Well, here's the deal. Your job is to write. Their job is to edit. So what happens is, it works like this, okay? So, and this is generally, I think O'Reilly works a little bit differently, but the work I did with A-Press and Wiley worked like this, okay? I write the chapter, so this is the author, me and Alex Gutman, we would write the chapter. All right, the chapter then goes to what's called the developmental editor. I'll give you more about what the developmental editor does. What they're going to do at this stage is they're just going to look at it and say, they're going to just kind of do a gut check, right? So they're just looking for any alarm bells. This is my alarm. Did you not really write? Is your writing terrible? Did you plagiarize? Assuming that they don't see any of that, they're going to pass it off to the technical editor. Now, the technical editor is going to actually review the tech aspects of it, and they're going to put their edits in there. Let's draw a pencil here like that. They're going to put their edits, and then that's going to go back to you, the author. So, and then I should say, well, they're going to put their edits. Let me take a step back. They're going to put their edits in there, and then finally, the developmental editor is going to review it, and they're going to review it for just things like tone, format, consistency, etc. All the stuff that you would expect an editor to do because they're developing the content, okay? So they're going to then add in their notes. That goes back to you. This is the author, and then this is called author review. And usually at this point, as long as there's no major changes, it doesn't need to go back to the technical editor. If you get to author review and you're like, oh crap, I got to rewrite this whole chapter, then you need to tell your developmental editor it's going to go back to the technical editor for an additional review. Assuming that you're good with that, that you pass, it goes through developmental editing again, then you approve the chapter, then it's going to go to copy editing. All right, so the copy editor will go through it and, update the copy. You will do kind of another round of edits with that. Usually the copy editor, they'll make changes that you like. Every once in a while they didn't understand what you were saying and you need some sort of technical thing, and then you're like, you got to fix that, okay? You'll say leave it as is. That's called, if you're editing, that's called stet. Just a little editing thing. You'll just highlight it and type in stet, don't change it. Then it goes to proofing, so you get to see what it looks like in print. Again, another round of edits. You say yes, and then it goes to print, and then you're out the door. And that is the basic process. So the people that you need to know are the developmental editor. The developmental editor works kind of like, they're both kind of a producer and director here, right? So you're the talent. They're going to make sure that you hit your deadlines. They're going to be thorough. You want to become best friends with your developmental editor because in addition to doing the edits and structuring the book, their job is also to keep the project humming. So they're not going to be mean to you. They just want you to keep going. The deal is with developmental editors is no news is good news. So don't look to them for, oh, they didn't say my writing is good. Like, don't even worry about that, okay? We'll all go through that when you first start writing. If they don't say something, your writing is good. They don't want to say anything. They're just there to keep the project moving. No news is good news. Less is more with them, all right? Technical editors usually are going to have two when you write. Now, the relationship with technical editors can be tenuous because sometimes they can totally disagree with what you're doing. Just accept their opinion. You asked for it, and even if they disagree with the direction you're taking the book, chances are their views are good and solid, and the things they're going to say, you're going to be better off for it. So, you asked for their opinion, so take it. Obviously, author, that's you, and then a copywriter who comes in near the end. Again, developmental editor is the person you need to keep happy. After the exact acquisition editor takes you in, they're going to pass you off to the developmental editor. They're your best friend. Work well with them, and your life will be beautiful. All right, so here are things to think about when you're writing. First of all, when I first initially put this together, I wrote write less and discuss more. What does that mean? Well, the idea is that I was trying to write a lot and put everything inside the book. So, I also speak. So my best grand ideas, they shouldn't be in the book. They should be in discussions. They should be me out speaking. So go for smaller books. I learned this the hard way. My first book, Dashboards for Excel, was supposed to take 9 months, right? And it took 3.5 years because I wanted to write a tome. I wanted to get every idea out. And because that was late, we spun off some of the chapters into a smaller book called Advanced Excel Essentials. The big book has like a 3.7 review on Amazon. The smaller book has like a 4 point something. So what did I learn? I learned that smaller can be better. People like that I just focused on one topic and it was like in and out. This book, Becoming a Data Head, you can see this is not a huge book. The original page count we turned on was 399. We took that down to like 200 and some, and I think the book is way better off for it. That is the feedback we are getting. So I do believe that idea was validated within the market based off of what people told us. Like they got that we were writing a shorter book. All right, so niche topics really do well on the smaller books, right? Python, Excel for Python, R for X, right? X for Y. So doing something like that follows that is really going to help you out. Okay. So look, what does that mean? Bookshelves aren't what they used to be. So don't expect to see your book on a shelf. Why is that? Because the distributors want to make sure the book sells, right? And if you have a highly niche topic, they don't need to put it on the shelf. The average person coming in to the bookstore isn't going there for a niche topic. They're going there for general knowledge. And the nicher it is, the more likely it's going to be labeled as an advanced book or a textbook. And if it's labeled as these things by the distributor, and Ingram happens to be the largest distributor, so most likely if you go through a big publisher, Ingram is going to be the vendor who gets it on the shelves at the end of the day. they probably don't want to put it on there, all right? So if you want your book to be on the bookshelf, there's a few things you can do. The first thing you can do is write a broader topic, right? I mean, that's one of the things you can do. The next thing you can do is if you can get into a series, right? So Wiley has Wiley has tons of series, I should say. One of those series is For Dummies. Okay, so, there's a For Dummies series. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. I can't see, I'm trying to think of other series. I know Rox has a series, RWOX. A lot of companies have series. So if you can get in on a series, right, like the Excel 2019 Bible, the Bible series is another series I believe that Wiley has. If you can get on one of these series, then you are likely to be on a bookshelf because those types of things are, time dependent. They want new stuff every year. But most books today are going to sell as print on demand, right? So you buy it from an online retailer like Amazon, it gets printed and then it gets shipped. And this is just the future and the reality of books, right? Unless you can figure out a market that's going to want it in a different capacity. And then the other thing is to note, because this is happening right now, is that your book will likely be counterfeited. And even when people buy it in other countries, it may be a crappier version. The publishers can try their best to do what they can do to fight that, but just know that that could happen and you get some negative reviews here and there. I think it's just part of the game, and you learn a lot. I mean, you just learn a lot about the different experiences about how people are reading your book all around the world. So, it's just kind of like this space is still improving upon these things and figuring them out. One other thing is, if your book gets translated to different languages, this is like the cherry, right? This is the thing that helps you get to $1 million in gross revenue on your book. And note I'm saying gross, so you may still only take home a royalty percentage of that. But that's significant for the publisher and significant for you and your voice and what it says about the content of your book in terms of validating it as being, important to the market. So if you get translated, this just opens up vast doors of different markets beyond, in my case, English. And so this is something I definitely want to shoot for. I actually found out my most recent book is going to be translated into Russian. So this is also very, very cool. All right, so here are some acquisition editors I know. Go ahead and hit pause if you want to keep this up, take this information down.